One of the things you can offer is beautiful places where the Dharma is being taught, in your mandala offerings. And this is a really extraordinary place to offer. Physically it's very, very beautiful, astounding, and what a place for practice and to study with Dharma friends. It's really extraordinary. So there's a lot to rejoice in, and when you have the opportunity to visit other centers and other places, you'll see what the Sangha and community and friends have really created here. So it's a really beautiful offering. When I'm stuck in the traffic in LA and the fire trucks are going by and people are yelling and everything, it's places of study of the Dharma are all really little havens for us now, but it's really quite extraordinary here. So, it's wonderful to be here. So this afternoon we're continuing on the caregiving aspect of caring for the dying. And so I wanted to go over some of the points from a book about living called The Four Things That Matter Most. And it's by a doctor named Dr. Ira Byock, B-Y-O-C-K. And he's been in hospice for over 30 years. And in the ER for 15 years. And I also wanted to say, one of the, when I completed my chaplaincy certification, I had to join a community of other chaplains, and I chose one in downtown LA because the chaplain is extraordinary. He is a graduate of Harvard as a physician. I believe it was in oncology, but I'm not sure. So he was a physician and he became a chaplain. And so I asked him, why did you make this change in careers? And he said, because spirit was more interesting to me. The human spirit and our potential. So I'm really looking forward to working with him more. So the four things that matter most are these lines that we'll be working with. And they are, please forgive me. I forgive you. Thank you. And I love you. Bill, are you familiar with this book? Ah, great. So right in the beginning of this book, he says death can accelerate the completion of communications and relationships, and it can revitalize and open up connections. So I think especially at end of life, there's often a drive to connect and open up and complete and all of these things. So he says here, life is a sexually transmitted condition.
Transmitted terminal disease.
Yeah. Life is a sexually transmitted condition with a terminal diagnosis. Yeah. What did you say?
Life is a sexually transmitted terminal condition.
Terminal condition. And we are all close to death. No, we're always all close to death. So here what we're doing by really using these 4 lines that matter most. And I'm really finding this to be true too, that you begin to unbind yourself, you know, and see what your potentials are out there, and restoring closeness. There was one woman I was working with. The man was incredible. He was from Scotland, I believe. He was from Scotland. Very, very disciplined and precise, very exacting man. And their house kind of exuded that precision and cleanness and clarity. And he understood scripture so well. I could mention something and he'd just start reciting it. He knew it really well. So I knew I was up against a challenge in a way, but it was his wife who was really grieving and hoping, because she knew nothing about his work, nothing about his company, and he had started his own company. So suddenly it was all coming to closure, and she was going to inherit and have to take care of everything. And on top of that, she said to me, he's always been so cold and proper. And I was hoping that at death we could become close. And that in the dying state, he would open up to her. And he did not. And it was really interesting to watch how they interacted with each other. She almost had a fear of approaching him even, and yet she had to take care of him as he died. So, you know, to look at how we all, in our lives, you know, we all have these enclosures that we live in with our families and with our relatives. So how can we restore these rifts? And what can we do? And so sometimes stating the obvious can help, you know. But in this case, it was so cut and dried when I worked with him. No, it's like he knew the scripture and he knew this and he knew that, and it was really hard. I hadn't read this book yet when I worked with him, but I did the loving kindness prayer. Now, are you familiar with that one? May I be filled with love. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be happy. And then you turn it around and really share that with others. No, it's a really loving one that I work with a lot. So words, even though they're just words, can be incredible instruments of healing and opening. And many times people say to me, I don't know what to say. You know, I'm afraid to go and visit so-and-so because I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. It's very uncomfortable. Kind of like what you were saying yesterday. What to do, what to say, and sometimes people get into chit chat and small talk, and it just exhausts people. So really looking at how can we go to those places that'll really help them. And sometimes we have to be fearless and be willing to try to go to those places and try it out. You know? So I wanted to tell a story. I do my teachings in stories. When I lived at the nunnery in Dharamsala, there was, unbeknownst to me, I only knew about it peripherally, but our nunnery had a shortcut through the woods to go down to the Dalai Lama's temple. And then through the woods, there were all these tiny little huts throughout where people were in retreat or they lived. I think it's probably really different now, right?
It's all built up.
It's all built up. It used to be going through the forest. Yeah. Can you imagine tract homes back here? That's kind of what happened to the nunnery, in a way. But one day I was coming back from the Dalai Lama's temple, and they were doing some building. So there was a lot of mud, and then this huge fall off. And it was raining, so the mud was packed by a lot of people walking, and it was really dangerously slippery. Dangerously slippery, and it was raining, it was getting dark. And I'm walking back, and I see this old man coming with a cane, shaking like this. And he's heading out, across this muddy, I wouldn't even say it's muddy, it was like packed. But, when it's so packed, it's slick and dangerous like that. And I'm saying, where are you going? Where are you going? This is really dangerous. And he said that he was going to go on Korwa. He was going to walk around His Holiness's palace. And I said, look at, that it's raining, it's getting dark. You should come back tomorrow. And he's saying, I was just going to go on Korwa. So I said, the road is really dangerous. Let's go back. And so I helped him back to his place. His stairway was really rickety. He was rickety. And then we went into his hut, and it was really small, smaller than Venerable Children's place. And it just had like a little partition. And so his main room had nothing in it. It was like this bare floor with a shrine. And it was really, really cold. And then the next room had a place for a little pot to make some tea or heat up something. And then his bed. That was it. And I just was chatting with him and left him 50 rupees, which is like, what, $2 then or something, 50 rupees. And then I left. And so over the next few months, I'd drop in on him every once in a while and just bring him some food or bring some rupees. And then he died. And I went, the nun who I was friends with at the nunnery said it's really, really amazing because one of the previous abbots of our nunnery at one time had been selling off pieces of land that was the nunnery land given to them by Trijang Rinpoche. And he was selling off pieces. I believe to help make money for the nunnery, but so that monk had come to the nunnery and paid off his mortgage. He had an outstanding mortgage he hadn't paid in a long, long time, and he paid it off. And then on top of it, then I went back to the house because the nuns told me he's in meditation, that he's sitting in meditation. And the hut next to him was the man who kind of took care of him and bought food for him and things. And he was just weeping and weeping and weeping. And he just kept shaking his head and saying, he was so ordinary. He was so ordinary. And he sat in meditation for 3 days after he passed. And so you just never know who you're bumping into, it was really extraordinary, and to, this opportunity to just meet him on the path and then pop in every so often really led to his paying off his mortgage, which really kind of set the nunnery free of this feeling of unfinished business with him too. It was complete. So to see, sometimes our words, our actions, our encounters really have effects that we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I think that there are times when the nuns were grumbling because the lands were sold off. People were withholding the funds because why pay the nuns? They're doing fine. So words can be instruments of healing, and actions can really benefit others too.
I think this is part of your mic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't think I need it. Thank you. Okay. And oftentimes we don't know how much is missing in our relationships, even with our closest ones, until we are the ones who reach out. We have a lot of assumptions about how things are and how they are, and we carry that assumption with us. We carry it and just think that that is the way it is, not knowing all the story behind it. So it's these words, especially at end of life, help us to come current in our relationships, to really work with that. So Ira Bjork says, these words, please forgive me and I forgive you. He says these are really important because if in any significant relationship, there will always be some history of hurt. Some history of hurt behind it. So it's being able to really to clean things up, for whatever things that I may have done or said, knowingly or unknowingly. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. And the same with others. It's like, I forgive you for any things that you may have done, knowingly or unknowingly, that hurt me by your body, your speech, or your mind. I forgive you. Because otherwise we carry this around with us so much. And this is one on forgiveness from Paul Tillich. He says, forgiving presupposes remembering. And it creates a forgetting not in the natural way we forgot or we forget yesterday's weather, but in the way of the great in spite of, that says, I forget, although I remember. Without this kind of forgetting, no human relationship can endure healthily. Okay, so it doesn't mean we have to wait till somebody's dying to forgive them. And then also, even if they're gone, it doesn't mean that we can't do this exercise, right? So I would like to work with that. And, in forgiving someone, it doesn't mean that you are exonerating them or excusing them from doing the wrong that they did. And it doesn't alleviate guilt or lessen the transgression. So, but it's freeing you of the emotional baggage that's there, you know, of your anger, your hate, your recrimination, and your hanging on to old stuff. Okay? So shall we, any questions before we do this? I think you've done a lot of this with Venerable children also. So you can sit and call someone to mind. No, it may be someone who is facing an end of life right now. You can work with your mom.
Yeah, I thought that'd be great.
Yeah, right. And you can work with your mom. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can we work with someone who's already died?
Yes. Yeah. You can imagine them being alive and being present with you. Yeah. So as you sit, you can imagine that person sitting opposite you, facing you. And just think of them in your relationship, encounters you've had, things that you've gone through in your life. And just to come clear, you can say in your heart, please forgive me for anything that I may have done to you by my body, speech, and mind, knowingly or unknowingly. Please forgive me. And imagine that person completely getting your request. And then saying to that person, and it must be really some place, as much as you can, be sincere. I forgive you for anything you have done to me by your body, speech, and mind, knowingly or unknowingly. I forgive you. Especially if it's someone who's facing end of life or someone who's already passed on. Just really clearing, completing, opening your heart out to them, and imagine that they accept you, your apology. And this allows completing or continuing relationships. Okay, and when you're ready, you can come back to the room. Sometimes we carry a lot of pain and resentment in our heart. Sometimes it's very old. Sometimes it's really extremely difficult to let go. But this is kind of like wearing away the hardness, and beginning to soften. What's coming up for you?
I've worked with this, and I guess my mind was, I let go, and the next day, she's doing the same stuff again. And I'm just thinking, I was just thinking, okay, I need to fast forward it or something, to help, I can let go, years. And there's just that thing that says,
I can't what?
I said she's just going to do it tomorrow. I can't. So that was what, was coming.
She's an impermanent being too, and there'll be a day when she's not going to do it tomorrow.
I need to make it a daily practice.
Yeah. I can feel you really softening there. Yeah. And, for ourselves, how do we accept someone just the way they are? That's just the way they are. And when we have expectations of how they should be or what they should be doing, then we make the relationship difficult and challenging.
Or, it may not be what they should be, but, I guess it is. Because there's a false expectation of wanting them to be something other than who they are, for my benefit.
Yeah, right.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
Things would be so much better if you changed. It's like Sharon, who's come up here a couple of times. Yeah, she'd say, if it weren't for the students, I could really teach. I have so much to teach, but they just get in the way. So we blame our parents and ourselves, we blame others, and really it's so difficult to get together, You try and you just... And especially with the people that are really close to us. Now, my sister is so exasperating to me, and yet she's one of my favorite people, It's just so hard. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the fact that another person is difficult is an advantage because they really keep you on your toes when you start thinking you can walk on water or something. they pop your balloon.
I love it. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I thought I was doing really well. And then and somebody sobers you.
I was thinking that this is, for myself, that this is a good practice to do along with the purification. Because as we do doing the prostrations, I like looking at everything that you've done, and doing that. And there's something about the forgive me and I forgive you. The extra piece of I forgive you is very helpful. Because I leave that one out. Forgive me for what I've done, or what for me, but do I forgive you? That's really
that's another piece.
It'll really help inform that practice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. How are you doing?
Well, I think it's difficult to forgive without, what did you say? You don't have to exonerate them. I mean, I'm thinking of my family, and I'm thinking of my brother who can't forgive either my mother or my father, and my mother and my father did some bad things to him. But how do I tell him you don't have to? How do you forgive someone who did something really bad to you?
There's that part where you realize how they're very troubled too.
Right, I've told him that. They were people, they are people. They were, and, they had terrible lives. They were both orphaned, at 7, or something. They had terrible lives, my parents. And so they did the best they could. And somehow with him, it wasn't very good. And so he, wouldn't come see my mom. And I'm afraid he won't come see my dad either. My dad's in decline. But so I love this, but once again, it's just so hard. You go, to talk about active listening, and then we tried it, and you saw how hard it was. Nobody could do it. Chaplaincy, and you were still like, your superior was saying no, and this is anyway. These are
hard
words, but I don't think they're gonna work.
But to think that they're not going to work and not to try are two different things, and I think that it's worth the effort. And even if we bumble along, checking your intention and your wish to really try to reach out to your brother and to your parents, and to keep, sometimes it's really difficult while they're alive, and your brother may not be able to complete that. You know, we carry that and we go to our grave with that. But it's loving the person but not their actions, not condoning their actions, but no, it's like intellectually you understand they had a hard life too, they were challenged. And still, you know, we have to keep working on that compassion side, the forgiveness side.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth a try. and they're lovely words. I mean,
It's worth every try, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Do you have something, words you can add to that? Or anyone too, yeah.
You said they did the best they could, so we have to do the best we can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then he'll say, well.
That's okay. That's okay. The important thing is that you do what you need to do. You can't control how he reacts.
Yeah. Yeah.
People carry a lot of pain, and how do we keep loving them? Mm-hmm.
When we were doing this exercise, I was just picturing this situation with my mother. I have a very difficult relationship with my mother, and I'm an only child. And I pictured her, you know, kind of, you know, not sedated, but, you know, almost comatose. And I'm saying to her, you know, please forgive me. And I can see her perk up. She liked those words. And she would think that, you know, that would almost, I feel, would make her very happy to hear those words. But if I started to go into, and I forgive you, right, what are you accusing me of? I can just see her sitting up, folding up. And, you know, what is it that you're implying that I've done to you? And just, you know, I could do part A, but not part B. I think there are people that
Oh, absolutely, people are like that, yeah.
you can
Yeah.
do the first part, not the second.
Yeah.
You know, my mom was like that too, but in looking at it now, I think that, you know, saying that might actually open a door for the other person. Yeah.
It's
Because maybe your mom feels some regret, but due to her pride, she can't admit it, she can't say it, she can't verbalize it.
Well, she thinks I lived my life despite her, so I don't know. You know, I don't know. I mean, this would be really. It's giving me a lot of food for thought, because
She thinks
she's 78 years old, and you know, she's very good health, but someday that's going to change. And although I really seriously feel like she will outlive me, but so maybe I won't have this conversation. But I really think I may have one of those situations where it's possible that it could still cause an argument.
You're going to have that argument anyway. I think of my mother, and it's like, from thinking about this, we're going to have that argument anyway, whether I try it or not. You know, because it's repetitious, it's going to be, you know, so it's going to happen anyway, so why not give it a shot?
I'd give it a shot. I don't know if it'll work.
And I also think that, I think for your own mind and your well-being, it's important for you to ask for the forgiveness from her and let go of the expectation, the condition that says, now it's your turn. And whether it happens or not, for her to be able to hear you say, I have done things in my life in relationship to you that I am so sorry for. That, I think, is the door. It's
I
not
think
going to happen simultaneously, but let go of the expectation of her coming back with an open heart and saying, oh, by the way, I've been meaning to say. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, see, I thought that you know, that's, I really like that. That's wonderful for me not to have that expectation, but I thought that I would be saying to her, you know, please forgive me for what I've, you know, done that's hurt you. And then I would go on to say, and I forgive you. Oh, so.
Separate them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I like that. Okay. Yeah, then it could work.
Because then the peace
Yeah.
and the clarity and the open heart that you're so much wanting in your own experience, this is for you.
Right, right,
This isn't for her.
right.
This is for you.
I think it depends. It depends what, on the situation. If you open the door and if she's receptive, proceed. If she's not receptive, stop.
Right,
But
right.
you have to do that at a gut level at the time.
Yeah.
But you know you have the
And
option.
under sedation.
Yours are hers.
Yours.
Can you go to the thank you and I love you?
Oh, yeah, I think I could. I think I could do
Yeah.
all of these, you know,
Right.
much more easily than she could, but maybe I'm not giving her enough credit.
Maybe when you do all four together, then it kind of eases the pain of that second one. I forgive you. You know, you have to thank you in there too. Uh-huh.
I asked my dad to forgive me for what I had done in my childhood and my youth. But I didn't say to my dad that I forgave him. I did that internally.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest gift I've ever given to myself, was when I forgave him.
In your heart.
I let go of all the stuff I carried for so long, the hatred, the how could you do this to a child? It was like, it all disappeared. It was wonderful. So I don't think it has to be verbalized to the person. I think it can be internalized and work just as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, in facing some of that same situation of trying to find that place of forgiveness and whatnot, is I find that the words, you know, are there, but then in terms of softening the heart, so you really can really genuinely feel that forgiveness. The only thing I can think of is, you know, like Jeffrey Hopkins to say, you know, he talks about, you know, just start small, and then kind of work out. But it's like, well, you have time for that, you know, and you don't have, in terms of that softening of the heart, how can you get there?
It's a start though. Yeah.
It prevents, I guess that's maybe my expectation, is that when I want to say, please forgive me, and then I forgive you, and then I love you, and to have that genuine enough that it can be received that way. As soon as the words start to form, it kind of goes just like that. And
That it's
doesn't
ingenuine.
It doesn't want to flow out. So that's kind of the struggle.
Oh,
So a little bit of feedback, what you might have.
right,
So
right.
you just keep sitting with it as a part of your practice until you can get there.
Yeah, I think sitting would help. Looking at where the hurt and the anger are, where the pain is, and what the stuckness is. Sometimes pinpointing it that way can help you analyze, well, where did it upset you? So you can kind of trace it back to an incident or an event, and then look at what occurred. And sometimes taking apart an action helps in that way, because we might say or explode in anger, and look at how the emotion was really, really heavy and just intense at that point, and what was beyond that, before that, seeing how there were other circumstances that were compounding the situation, and how then, there's like the emotion, the feeling, the object that caused the arising of the emotion. There are many different ways you can begin to diffuse the upset in analysis, in your meditation. But it sounds like you want to really take out a big chunk rather than work on little bits. Did I hear that?
Let's get this resolved now.
Yeah, let's get this resolved now. Do you have a comment?
I also find it very helpful to imagine, to just say to myself, like if I'm having a hard time forgiving somebody or apologizing or, like that, to say to myself, okay, you don't have to do it, but let's just imagine. Yeah? Like, what would it be like to imagine that you let go of that? And I find that gives me the space. Just, do.
Mm-hmm.
This was pretty interesting for me, actually. Yesterday I was just talking about, I kind of have this general anger at death. And so what I just kind of discovered from doing this, that, and I was taking my dad, like, please forgive me, and that felt fine to say. But to say, like asking him to forgive me for the things I was thinking. But to say, I forgive you, I could what's that word?
Viscerally.
Thank you. Feel my heart hardening. And then, it was kind of like I just exploded inside, I hate you all. Like then I kind of threw my mom in there too. So it was just really interesting to kind of go through this. That's a work to do.
And what are you hanging on to there?
Right. Most I can trace is when they split up. When my parents split up, like I'm hanging on to that. And I never thought it affected me, actually. Yeah, duh. But I think that must be what I've been hanging on to, so.
Wow. And how old were you when they split up?
9. Wow, thank you.
Yeah, it's like for a 9-year-old, your parents are your refuge. And it just gets exploded, it disappears. Your entire ground of relating to the world and your protection.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think I told you after my dad died, I got into a lot of this stuff. So it's kind of like all of that is kind of making sense to me now.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you.
Yeah. So here's a quote I had to put in completely. Forgiveness is emotional economics. The one-time cost you pay to clear up years of compounded emotional pain. Refusing to forgive means accepting the cost of hurts inflicted on you, compounded 1,000 times, and carrying them forever as you accrue in negative emotional energy. Refusing to forgive is a decision to remain in debt. I should send this to my brother too, I think. Bill?
A variation on that I've heard is that not forgiving is like drinking poison every day and expecting the other person to die.
Ooh. Yeah.
Quote in your Dr. Bieloff book, or?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a man who's been declining for years with some kind of I believe it's Alzheimer's, and his wife has been the main caregiver for years. And when I finished reading this book, I had them do this exercise, and he can barely talk. A lot of times he doesn't talk at all. He's mostly bedridden. So his wife has a caregiver come in from like 8 to 1 every day to just help her so she can run out and do errands. And the I love you part, he was able to say, I love you. I love you. He could get that one out. And then I went through the please forgive me part. Nothing. And I forgive you. Nothing. And then his wife said to me, because we're leaning over the bed, she says, did I tell you why we never got married in church? And they're in their 80s, you know. And I said, no, you didn't. And she said, he wouldn't go to confession. He wouldn't go to confession because he did everything with complete conviction and knowing and intention. And so he wasn't going to confess any of it. So they refused to allow him to get married in the church because he wouldn't do confession. And we looked down on him and he's grinning ear to ear. He doesn't have anything to forgive, you know. It's like he did everything with complete volition. It was really sweet, actually. So we waste a lot of time allowing our feelings to rule us, you know, and it becomes like we become like pincushions in a way. You know, it's like, don't touch me with that, don't talk to me about that, and we become really vulnerable in so many ways because we're carrying this stuff. You know, so to look at how can we release it and let it go, just release it and let it go. Okay, so where are we? A lot of people also need to work with forgiving yourself. No? A lot of times people have anger when they're diagnosed with a terminal illness. And one day that'll happen to us too. No? When the doctors will say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. And in fact, there's still actually a lot of doctors who don't believe in hospice at all still, you know, and they will do everything all the way because that's, you know, their Hippocratic oath, you know, that they were going to help all the way through. And so it makes it extremely difficult for them to let go and say, I can't help you anymore. So, for them, it's like they failed. But, look at it in ourselves too, where we need to forgive ourselves, because we are going to get to that place. And so one day that statement is going to come for us too. I'm sorry, this is terminal. Whether we've finished our projects or not. Whether we said, I forgive you or not. And so it's something that we need to look at, because, just like those 16 things, they're going to be taken away from us. Okay, so here's some other notes too. It says your main diagnosis is not lung cancer from smoking. It's because you're mortal. Right? And if you're stuck in guilt about being ill and unworthy of love, you won't be able to experience the acceptance that others have for you. So, it's really true, this low self-esteem stuff and poor self-image, if we can't accept ourselves, anything someone else says to us is seen as they're not speaking truthfully. And it can't go in, because you don't believe it anyway, or they're mistaken. So there's a huge part where we need to work on that for ourselves as well. Okay, so let's work on thank you, so that we can feel a gratitude and to feel appreciated. And a lot of times people say this. I hear this in hospice, Bill. I don't know, maybe let me know if you hear this too. But when we say, I encourage people to say, I love you. Tell them how much you love them. And people say, oh, they already know that. They already know that. No, just say it again. No, especially when they're seriously ill or facing end of life, those things are so meaningful. Now, just those little things. I love you. Okay, so here's your exercise. So think back to when you were a small child. How did joy feel in your body? What did you do when you experienced joy? Did you giggle or sing? what continued to give you joy? When you were a teenager, what evoked joy for you? And what gives you joy now? What happened to joy in your life? Okay, you can come out of your contemplation. So how did that exercise go for you? Can you tell me more?
I don't recall when I was little, and I really had to really dig to find a place where I had experienced joy. So, yeah, I found it interesting. And I noticed also when I laugh, I choke. And there's something there. It doesn't come out easily.
Now, you mean?
Yeah. So, yeah. I tried to see experiences when I was little and I couldn't feel the joy.
I actually went through the same thing just now, and it was a little bit surprising, but it was, the memories were of tough times more. It's my earlier experiences that really kind of bring me to consciousness as a little child, were things that were kind of hard. So I had a similar experience in being challenged to find the joy. The one place of joy that I did find was my grandmother from Chicago came out to visit us in Hawaii, and being really shy and being not knowing her at all, and she was really kind of loud and outrageous. And I was 6, and I kind of bumped into her downstairs, and I just knew, it's like, okay, what are you going to do? And I walked right up to her and gave her a hug. And so that was a memory for, it's like, oh, that was really had a good effects, because shortly after that my mom said, and it was her mother saying, your kids are really good. And I thought, but otherwise it was hard. I went through the tough ones. So, yes?
I experienced a lot of joy when I was a little boy. I was lucky in that regard. And I always had these surges of energy when nice things would happen, and usually it was somebody doing something nice for me. And then as I got into my teenage years, I was also reasonably happy. And then I realized as I got into adulthood, before I met the Dharma, the joy was drying up bad. And I think that's really what got me going with the spiritual practice. It was just, there was nothing. And my life was becoming just empty and black.
Why was it drying up, you think?
Because I kept on looking for sex and alcohol and any other source outside of myself to give me that same feeling. And it just wasn't working. And I just realized now, as you went through that progression, that especially in the last year or two, you know, in the context of my career and just in life in general, the thing that gives me great joy is helping someone out and putting a smile on their face. And it just, I get that surge. I feel like a little boy almost.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah. And really, if it had not been for the Dharma, I don't even want to think of where I would be right now. It would be a very black spot, I can tell you that.
And your profession is as an attorney?
As a criminal defense attorney, yeah.
Uh-huh, yeah. And looking at how we cultivate our careers too, you know, the profession, and how we have like a persona to manifest, and the way we conduct ourselves and live our lives with that. No, it's just sometimes it's like we're creating something that we think is the way society wants us to be, no, and we start losing that inner joy. Yeah. Joy over here.
I'm like you. I don't have joy in my childhood. I can't even remember most of my childhood. If I go back, it's very blurry. But then as I sort of got further away from my parents, I sort of learned to enjoy life. So mine's sort of exactly the opposite of yours, where I'm ecstatically happy as an adult and as a child. And it's just interesting, different things for different people.
And why? What is your joy now?
Helping other people. Helping other people.
Yeah. Wow. It's so much about relationship, you know? And then really these 4 lines are like opening up those lines of communication again. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My memory of joy was hard to find. My parents divorced when I was 6, and so it was previous to that. And I remember my dad holding me on his lap. And it was just comfortable and cozy and warm. And then they got divorced. And I had a stepfather who was very mean and cold, and so I shut down. And now I have grandchildren, and I'm starting to feel that joy again.
Yes.
It's real short. I was just thinking one time Lama Zopa said, those people that don't do samsara well are good practitioners. And the ones that do samsara well usually aren't the greatest practitioners.
What's that?
You look confused.
Yeah, those who don't do samsara well are good practitioners.
Because they can't find samsaric happiness.
Oh, okay.
So in a way, it's
Yeah.
a blessing.
Ah.
We don't have any joy as a kid.
Yeah.
May as well get out of here.
Please.
I'm struck by, I thought I was always the only one who didn't remember much of childhood. And when I do, it's of the hard stuff. Very early loss of a mother, very, very young. And I think more than joy, I remember grieving for a long, long time.
Mm. How old were you?
I was less than 2 3/4. And, but somewhere along, I think joy can be learned. I mean, maybe when you're a child and you can ascribe and remember some joyful moments, it's maybe easier, I don't know. I think joy can be learned. I'm not sure I still always recognize it. But no one who knows me would describe me as an unhappy, unjoyful person, so it must be there. I just don't always recognize it.
Mm.
The one thing I do recall, however, is you said, did you laugh? Laugh doesn't come easily to me, even though I feel that I'm not an unhappy person. But did I sing? I feel like I must have sung because music is something to this day, is still a thread for me that does bring me a lot of joy and comfort. So this was very interesting.
Great. Hang on a second. Oh, I had missed you before. Sorry.
It's okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
I couldn't have talked earlier anyways.
Oh.
It wasn't going to come. I mean, I wasn't going to be able to express it out because I was too much in tears at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to talk and cry at the same time.
Yeah. And now?
Well, I don't know. Which am I going to talk about? The first part or this one here? I'll just kind of bring them in. I'm going to go back to the first exercise. I think I need to verbalize that.
Okay.
As hard as it might be. It's really not that sad. It really isn't. But I'm realizing in doing the exercise of asking my father's forgiveness, doing it both ways, I didn't realize the hard shell that I've created around this. And this meaning, my father is actively dying right now. And I haven't been able to say that out loud and ask for, like when we do at the end of the evening and to dedicate our merit, I haven't been able to say that. I say it internally, but I haven't been able to verbalize it. Because I am not going to get hung up in that. I just have this arrogance around it. And he's my stepfather. And I feel very fortunate that I've had 4 parents, not 2 parents, but 4 parents. The first 2 split and remarried, and both of those people became my parents. And so he's my stepfather. He's the last of the 4 to go, and I think that's why it's very difficult. And he hasn't done it. He's been wonderful. He's been just an incredibly wonderful stepfather. He's done some horrible things. And vice versa, and that's not, like the past things aren't what is the issue, because I don't feel like that raises concerns for me. It's what is happening right now, and how he's distancing me, and has ever since my mom died about 12 years ago. He has gradually, because I remind him so much of my mother, I think. So he won't pick up the phone and call me, but he loves to talk to me when I call. He absolutely loves it. And we tell each other we love each other all the time. And so when he was diagnosed with cancer just recently, again, he said, I've done some horrible things in my life. And I know. I said, I know, haven't we all? And he just like broke down. It was like this. He needed to say that. He needed to say that. And it was, I know some horrible things he's done to him. We didn't talk about what they were, but they didn't need to be said. I didn't feel like, and I still don't feel like they needed to be talked. But some of the other things, he's distancing me and he shut my daughter out. And so that when I realized that, I didn't realize that was hurting me so bad. Because I have internalized it, intellectualized it. I understand why he's doing it, yada, 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 but I haven't, even now I feel there's just this hardness around it. Not, even though I understand internally, emotionally, it hurts a lot more than I realized. And she was his little prize.
Your daughter.
My daughter was his little prize, his favorite of all the grandchildren. And he shut her out.
There could be pain in his own heart, and his way of making closure too, of it also being hard to say goodbye. And you might, have you asked him? Have you asked him to see your daughter?
No, and we live quite a distance away. San Diego, Olympia. So, so there's a distance as far as that.
So when you say he shut your daughter out, it was that he won't talk to her on the phone?
Yeah,
or?
it's not like he wouldn't. If she happened to be there and I was on the phone, it's not like he says, no, I'm not going to talk to her, because he won't admit to the issue. What it is that she's adopted children that are not of the same race, and so he doesn't agree with that. But he won't say that. So ever since that has happened, he doesn't do what he used to do, the kinds of things he used to do. The way he used to talk about her and be so proud of her, and those kinds of things. And so now he doesn't acknowledge her. He doesn't even ask about her when we talk on the phone anymore.
She adopted children?
She has adopted, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we all have our own edges, of where our own bias, tolerance, prejudice come up, and it just could be that he's hit a wall, and it's hard for him to get through that one. And to understand that we, that we have those places too. And to just understand and be loving as much as you can,
And I think what's happened for me is, again, I can understand where he's coming from and intellectualize it. I guess what was surprising for me is how much I was hurting from it.
Yeah.
The pain.
Have you told him that?
I just realized it. Honestly, I just realized how much it was hurting me, because I've been acting like it's okay, and yeah, he's dying, and that's okay too, and I'm realizing it's not feeling as okay as I thought it was.
Right. Yeah.
Seems like that might have happened around the same time you really realized he was dying.
No, actually, no. This has been going on. My grandchildren are 8 years old now.
I'm sorry. I thought I heard you say that you were able to say out loud that he was going through the dying process.
Yeah. And we talk about it at home. It's interesting. It's just I'm a little surprised at my reaction today. It's not like we don't talk about it either. About his dying and his process.
So you talk about his dying at home and his non-communicative way at home?
No, I don't talk about the non-communication part. Because I don't know. George is just like that. I mean, the whole family, that's just how it is. So we've just accepted that.
Yeah.
And
So
I
you've
don't-
accepted, but it's also like there. It seems like there's some assumptions there, and so you're not broaching it based on his actions. But perhaps you can open the door somehow, in your phone calls, in your asking. Sometimes we have to ask the hard questions. It's kind of like I was saying, with the active listening, when it goes smoothly, I feel like a really good chaplain. And then when I get the coming up short, or I'm confused, or it was nice to meet you, but we'll call you. We want to see you again or something. And going, oh, okay, what did I do or not do, But people have a lot of stuff, and so do I, and sometimes we have to ask the tough question to really see what we can do to open the door again. And for some of my clients, it's true. It's like they're not used to somebody in Buddhist robes walking into their house, and for some it's disarming, that they're just like, come on in, tell me more about it. And for others, it's just too much of a confront, And so, to see how to just kind of keep your again, all your senses open and aware of how can I approach this, it's kind of like your opportunity, rather than to say, well, he's like this and like this and like this, and therefore, and because we're assuming when your heart is feeling closed down too, when your heart is really aching. Yeah, Bill, you wanted to.
Well, what just happened is really what chaplaincy is, and it's what active listening is. I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Alaya.
Did you see how it felt to name that emotion that had been there, and how empowering that was? That is the gift of active listening. That is what we can foster in another person by practicing active listening.
Okay, so we're going to need to stop. So let me just go through I love you real quick. Huh?
We love you too.
It declares that our relationships matter, and matter the most. So sometimes we hold out, sometimes at other times we don't, we can't say it. Sometimes saying I love you is hard to say because it's almost like saying goodbye, as it has so much, it's loaded with meaning. It's like an engineer that I worked with who could not say the Lord's Prayer, and all he would do was tell me the stories about how when he was a little boy, his parents gave him a nickel to put in the offering bowl, but he'd go to the store instead and buy a candy bar and go sit by the river. And it was almost like, is that your confession? And he just kept saying, I can't do it, I can't do it. And I just started saying the Lord's Prayer one day, and he just burst into tears and just said the Lord's Prayer with me. And it was almost like he needed permission, or the floodgates opened for him to just be able to go there. When he'd been this tough engineer who was, hard driving, hard drinking, rough, tough mountain man kind of person, And it was so beautiful to see how he could just collapse into that heart. The heart that was holding out, was holding out. And so these really strong Christians are going, it took a Buddhist nun. Yeah. So sometimes, we can, we just have to open up and say, I love you. Just like that man with Alzheimer's who wouldn't say, I forgive you, or please forgive me, but he could say, I love you. Yeah. Okay, so let's just sit for a moment with those words, just those words. So here, let's imagine your loved ones in front of you, and then your circle of friends, companions, your teachers. And people who are difficult for you, and the vast array of strangers and all sentient beings. Just open your heart to them. And think of the Bodhisattva wish to remain in samsara even for one sentient being. And say in your heart, I forgive you. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. So we'll just keep riding on Venerable Children's coattails. Where was it? Newport Beach? I was sitting next to you at Newport Beach when His Holiness, they announced His Holiness was getting the Academy Award, the Nobel Peace Award. I live in Hollywood. Nobel Peace Prize. And there are two women who were really helping with the organization, and His Holiness was staying in a private residence, and he was upstairs, and there was a sweeping, spiral staircase that came down, and these two women. Do you know Lonnie Wu? And anyway, so they came early in the morning, and the announcement had been made public on the news. And they opened the door, and His Holiness came out, and he was blowing them kisses from the top of the stairs. And I was like, I just love that about His Holiness, you know, just this evident and obvious and so forthcoming with his joy and his love. Yeah. So may we be like Him.